Good evening, everyone. Time for this week's silver update. This is the gold chart, the weekly chart provided by netdania.com. You can click on the link below. I just wanted to start off with the gold chart because gold is significantly stronger than silver right now, but you can see from the moves we've had in the last couple of days that silver is going to catch up. I think silver is going to do a slingshot. If we just flip over to the silver chart and look at a comparison, you can see doesn't have nearly the strength that gold has. So, but if you remember when we had the crash, if you want to call it that, from above 1900 down to nearly got almost down to 1500, but you remember all of the gold bashers came out of the woodwork to tell us that the gold was in a bubble, it was crashing, the bull market was over. So I think you can see just by looking at this formation that even though we haven't gone into new all-time highs, one can fairly safely conclude from this formation that they were wrong. If this would have been a type of parabolic crash, then you would have seen a bounce. Of course, you always get a bounce, and then you would have seen something like this, which clearly we didn't get, and so those people were proven wrong. And of course, when we go into new highs, they're going to be obviously proven wrong. But I think it's early enough now we can say that they were definitely wrong, that gold has not ended its bull run. Gold is much more like where it was about here in the recovery stage. And of course, they called a top here. They called one here, they called one here, they've called a million tops, and I think it's pretty clear that they're wrong. So I wanted to jump over the silver chart and take a look at the MACD, because if you remember when I was very, very closely watching the MACD cross on the weekly, I was looking for a decisive cross. Sometimes you can get a stuttered or slow cross, such as some of these, and you just don't get a decisive move. We got the decisive move that I was hoping for, and you can see that we rallied from the low of 26, touched twice, and now we're almost to 36, so that's a $10 move. Percentage-wise, that's a large move. We're approaching 30% gain for silver. So obviously silver is the greatest investment asset of the year, bar none, and you are not hearing that in the media. Big surprise. So back to the MACD here, you can see that the last time we had a very large smackdown, which of course this coincided with this massive financial crisis in the United States, which has spread to the world. We got the crossover, and then we pretty much rallied all the way up to the zero line, and that's where we got a pause. You can see that reflected in the price here. We hit about 1465, and then we fell down to about 1180. So that's where we paused and fell back. You can see where we are right now. We haven't even reached the zero line. The trajectory on the approach is not as slow as this one. You can see we're running a steeper trajectory, so that may portend a more violent cross through this zero line. You always want to watch if we cross through the zero line or just touch it here. My guess is going to be that we will cross very strongly through the zero line, just as we crossed through the MACD line here from the red to the blue. So if that's the case, we may get a move of, say, up to 40 or so if we get that type of move through the zero line. And then of course we'll just be in positive territory, and you can see the last rally we had, you can see these rally tops. Let's pull the numbers on them. We've got a high MACD of 0.61. The next one gave us a high MACD of 1.46. That's roughly doubled. The next one gives us 1.57. And then we get all the way up to a full 5 plus read on the MACD. So if this pattern followed, I don't know what it would be if we maybe got a 10 read on the MACD. Even if we got a 5 read again on the MACD, I think we're talking $75 to $100 silver price just to match this, and we could get a 10, so that could be 150 or 250. Who knows? So we're just watching it, and we're going to see where it goes. I want to take you over to the main stories of the day, and they're over at silverdoctors.com. Great blog there. The doc is always on, always watching what's going on. Couple of stories I wanted to cover. The first one is about the sunken treasure that was found by the Odyssey and has now been claimed by Spain, and the judges have ruled that it belongs to Spain. And so this silver is about to be shipped back to Spain, and I did some quick math. If you look at the tons and work it out, I think it comes to, well, here it is here, 594,000 silver coins, so maybe 500,000, 1,000,000 ounces. Not really sure what that number is going to be. So a lot of people are talking about this decision. Now, I tried to dig a lot deeper into this decision to try to understand what was going on. I found a site for the Odyssey, and if you go to the Black Swan legal filings, this is over at Odyssey Marine Exploration. Now, you have to understand that these were filed under Black Swan. So the Odyssey actually didn't file their finding as being this wreck of this ship that we later find out that they say is this Spanish ship that was en route from Peru to Spain and was sunk by the British. And you can go through these. I'll put the link here so you can go through all the legal filings that happened, but I briefly read through here, and one thing of note that I found interesting is that the U.S. courts seem to be very fast and loose with the truth. They really didn't want to get to the bottom of... Now, there are a number of claims. This was claimed by Spain to be sunk in wartime, and therefore it comes under sovereign immunity. The ancestors of the merchants are claiming that this was a commercial ship, and 70 or 80% of that silver was actually owned by the merchants, not by Spain. But if we look at one of the appeals here that that they made, and I'm going to try to find that here. First of all, one of the key facts you need to know about this is that there was no ship found. When the Odyssey found this site, they did not find a sunken ship. They simply went to a site that was, and by the way, when this first started out, Spain lied and claimed that it was in Spanish waters. It later came out it was not in Spanish waters, and that's why the Odyssey came and filed under the U.S. law for the salvage laws. So, and later Spain admitted that they had lied, that this was not in Spanish waters. But even more interesting is when we get to this appeal by the descendants of the ancestors who owned the cargo of the ship. And this is aboard the Mercedes. Now, they're saying it's the Mercedes, but I've not found any evidence to indicate proof that it was. And the Odyssey argued that there were actually more than one ship there. Now, it says that the descendants argue that the district court missed the basis of their claim, calling them the descendants of those aboard the Mercedes, and the court also missed the fact that no vessel was found at the site, and that in any event, property rights to cargo are distinct from the rights to the vessel. So this is two really important points here, and I think that we see a pattern. I really don't think... I think that the legal rulings now that are coming out of the United States government are really just a farce. They're just a pretense. They're an attempt to convince people that there's some sort of fact-finding, and that there's some sort of law going on here, but there really isn't. I think the courts in the United States are probably just as corrupt as the politicians and the corporations and the Federal Reserve and the banks. They're really all just a bunch of corrupt liars who are running this system. So whoever paid off who and greased off whoever's palm to get this thing done, to get the money back to Spain, and as the doc has tried to point out, that of course when Spain goes bankrupt, just like Greece, they're going to take this silver and it's going to come back to the United States. So that's the implication of the doc's article. But the fact that a U.S. court in their court filings would state that the basis of their claim, and they called them the descendants of those aboard the Mercedes, the fact that a U.S. court could not distinguish between the descendants of the people aboard the ship and the descendants of the merchants who owned the silver that was on the ship, that they could not make that distinction and that was never again called into question, is frankly stunning to me. So I have absolutely no confidence in U.S. courts. I think the Odyssey made a big mistake. Now, the other thing you have to understand is the reason why the Odyssey brought the cargo back to the United States is the United States is one of the few nations in the world that has laws for salvage that can recognize these staked claims. So they brought it back here. That now turns out to be a very large mistake. So again, the United States is beginning to exit the arena of fairness and exit the arena of being a fair arbiter. I think the Odyssey learned that lesson. I don't think you're going to see too many claims brought back to the United States and made by the Odyssey in the future. Now, what is so ironic about this is that we look at the Kingdom of Spain. Now, this is a kingdom, I think that, pardon all my Spanish listeners, but I think that it's a kingdom that you could safely say that is a has-been. Now, this is a kingdom that was, at its time, the most powerful kingdom in the world. They dominated South and Central America and even North America, and they looted, and we're not even going to go into that, looted and pillaged gold and silver from those Indian and nations and Incan and all the rest of those empires. They looted tons and tons of gold and silver from those nations, enslaved their peoples, and if you want to know the history, you can read that yourself. It's a long, long history of Spain's conquering of Central and South America. But it was a very powerful kingdom in its time, and now it is just a shadow, in fact, even less than a shadow, that is grasping at straws to try to get 500 million ounces of silver. And of course, we know they're going to be very soon next on the chopping block. And I think that that should be a very important lesson for Americans to learn, that just because you're the most powerful nation in the entire world doesn't mean that you cannot be reduced down to a very tiny power at some point in time. So I want to go to the next story that's covered on Silver Doctors, and this is, in my opinion, even a more important story. And let's get back to the Silver Doctors main page. And this is a story about where the doc claims that the cartel dumped 102.5 million ounces of paper silver in 7 minutes, and yet the raid fails. And you've got, I believe, a screenshot of NetDanny. I don't know for sure if that's NetDanny. I can't get much closer, but it looks like the NetDanny charts that I use, and you can see that they did fail. So I wanted to look a little bit closer at the price action because it's so fascinating. So let's clear off our charting tools and get back to the silver. Fortunately, we're still in close enough time frame to when this happened that we can look at the chart. We'll have to go to the 1 minute chart of silver, and we can see this point where the doc is referring to here. You can see it very clearly that you have this. Well, let's go ahead and put up the volume so you can see that this instance here, which occurred beginning at 1445, that's going to be 2:45 Eastern Standard Time to roughly 2:55. So really a 10-minute period. We're on the 1 minute chart. So these are 1 minute bars. Now, before I go into the analysis of what occurred, I want to take you over to Wikipedia so I can go over the candlesticks so we can explain what these candlestick charts mean. Now, the candlesticks are one of the most useful charts you can use, and the reason why is they give you a lot of information in one picture. I think the saying is that a picture's worth 1,000 words. So candlesticks are kind of like that. The main chart you need to, or the main picture you need to see to understand how candlesticks works is this one right here. This pretty much explains everything to you if you understand, and we'll go back to the red and the blue here. In this case, it's red and blue. Blue is up, red is down. In this case, it's black and white, but black is down and white is up. So just try to keep that in mind. So the main point is this, that what a candlestick chart gives you is 4 pieces of information. It gives you the high and the low and the open and the close. So this first candlestick we're looking at here is a down candlestick. In other words, the price on this candlestick opened right here. And during that, let's say this is a minute time frame. If this were a minute, we don't know what the time frame is. It's just, this could be any time frame, but let's say this is a minute time frame. In 1 minute, the price opened at this price, it traded as high as that price, it traded as low as that price, and it closed at that price. This is a bear candlestick because it is indicating a down move between open and close. This candlestick over here is a bull candlestick. That means that it opened here, it traded as high as here, traded as low as there, but closed here. So when we go back to the candlestick charts, you can see we'll go back and look at some historical candlesticks. Let me get my line tool off of here. So we'll go back and look at some historical candlesticks so you can see how it works. You can see this series of blue candlesticks. This is obviously a bull rally. So that's what you get from candlesticks. You can see when you have a bull move, you get a long series of blue candlesticks because it opened here and closed there, traded wherever, but and then it opened here and closed there, opened here, closed there, etc. That's a bull move. You can see this downdraft here. You got an open here, closed there, open here, closed there. This one's a wash, which means it opened and closed at the same price, but it really touched a low, and it has a continuation. Excuse me. So there's a continuation pattern downward, and this is the type of pattern that you see when you're looking at candlesticks. You'll see series of blues on the upward move, series of reds on the downward move, and then blue and red mixed when you're going sideways. So what we want to do is examine the candlestick pattern, and we'll go ahead and bring our volume back here. Now, what is so fascinating about this pattern that the doc discovered, and that is so anomalous, I will call this anomalous. If you remember the May flash crash that we had in the stock market, there was a series of anomalous behaviors in price charts, and some of the stocks went to zero and came all the way back, and these were not free market activities. that occurred. They were algos, they were computers manipulating prices. Now, what I find so fascinating about this price activity is when you understand candlesticks. So, the first thing you want to note about this is that we have a series of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 candlesticks that are all bear candlesticks in a row. This is not a formation that you see in a normal market. So what this means is, excuse me again. What this means is that in each of these minutes, the price opened here and closed there. Then the next minute it opened there and closed there. The next minute it opened there and closed there. Same here, same here, same here, same here, until the pattern was broken and buying came in. Now, what does that mean? Does that mean that there were tremendous selling pressures that were met by tremendous buying pressures? This is not a normal series of candlesticks. So I'm just going to say my best guess estimate on what occurred here is that for the first time in a very long time, and perhaps the first time in known history as far as I know, you had a cartel sell-off that was met by another cartel buy up. So we had two algos meet at the same time. And just as quickly as they sold it, it was bought. They sold it, it was bought. They sold it, it was bought. They sold. So this is a very interesting thing that happened. You can see the volume confirms it. It looks like someone came in and tried to crash the market. Someone came in and bought the market. Crash, bought, crash, bought. Same pattern. So a very interesting analysis, a very interesting catch by the Silver Doctor, and it's kind of interesting that it coincides with this silver going back to Spain and a lot of other fireworks going on in the silver market. You can see when we look at this spike here, this is a tremendous spike that occurred. So very questionable things that are going on, and I think that silver is at the very heart of many of these things. That doesn't surprise me at all. I think when silver breaks through $50 an ounce and starts moving towards triple digits, then a lot of these things are going to begin to come out, and I think a lot of people will be surprised. And we'll talk to you next time. Good evening, everyone. Time for another silver update. This is a gold chart. We're going to start out with this chart and etc., etc. Testing 1, 2, 3.